Today we're going to look at the properties of solving a multi-step equation. So one thing we have to remember is that there are different properties that actually allow us to solve equations, and we are going to be using those in justifying our problems that we're going to be working with. So first, this should be filled in for you guys already, and we're just going to talk about what it means, what these different properties mean, and how we're going to use them to solve. So first, addition property of equality. This is something you guys have been using since you learned how to solve equations. All it means is that what we can do is add the same thing to both sides, and it'll allow the equation to remain equal. And the important part is that this property means it will remain equal. So if I add c to both sides, it has the maintenance of equality. So let's see this in practice. You guys solving an equation, x minus 5 equals 10. In order to get x by itself, we would have to add 5 to both sides. And according to the addition property of equality, that will allow it to maintain equality. So I can end up solving x equals 15 by using addition property of equality. Subtraction property of equality maintains the same concept. So if I have this original equation, I could subtract by the same amount on either side and it maintains equality. So when we're solving an equation like this, x plus 10, if I want to get rid of that plus 10, subtraction property of equality maintains that if I subtract the same thing from both sides, that equal sign will stay true. And that is what allows me to solve the equation. So I get x minus 5 because of that subtraction property of equality. And this concept continues on. So I can multiply. So if you look here, there's nothing between the signs or between the letters. That means multiplication. So I can multiply to both sides and it will maintain equality. So x divided by 5, what I can do is multiply by 5 to get rid of the 5 to get x by itself. Equality is maintained in that process according to multiplication property of equality. So I get that x equals 50. Division has the same concept. I can divide by c on both sides, or any number is what that means. So here I need to get rid of this 2. So what I can do is divide by 2 on both sides because I'm doing the same thing to both sides. Equality is maintained and I get x equals 5 because of that division property of equality. A lot of these you already know because we've been doing this with solving equations since middle school, but today what we're going to work on is assigning a property to that step. Now, some other ones you already know, distributive property. This is where you look for parentheses, and distributive property just means we are allowed to multiply into a parentheses. So when I multiply or I distribute, I get 2 times x, which would be 2x. 2 times 5, which is 10, equals 15, and that is distributive property. Combining like terms is something you've also been doing for a long time. So one thing we have to remember with combining like terms is that you can only combine if the items are on the same side of the equal sign. So one thing I like to do is draw a line down the middle so I remember that I cannot merge either side when I combine like terms. I'm just looking for something on the same side. For example, 2x and 8x, those can combine to a 10x. So this becomes 10x plus 5. 5 and 10 can combine, and that makes 15. But what I can't do is combine that 5 with the other side. Remember, the only way you can do things on either side is if you do it to both. Combining like terms is not that concept. You're just simplifying or cleaning up each side. The last property we'll talk about is symmetric property. Symmetric means it's the same on either side. So what that means is if I have something like this, 5 equals x, it means x has the same value of 5. So it doesn't matter which side either item are on. We're allowed to flip this around so that x is on the left, and this maintains the same concept of 5 equaling x. Now it's important to note that your final answer should always look like this. So in order to flip it around, we use something called symmetric property. We'll get into types of solutions later. We'll leave this blank, and what we're going to look at next is our actual notes page, notes 15, and I'm going to take you through actually solving and justifying at the same time. Now, one thing we'll use are abbreviations for these different properties. So anytime we use addition property of equality, we will use APOE. SPOE for subtraction property of equality, MPOE for multiplication, DPOE for division. Distributive property, you can use DP. Combining like terms is CLT, and symmetric property SP. Now, an important note to remember, and this will make sense as we start going through, all properties are written on lines that contain equal signs. If you see an equal sign, you need to have a property next to it. Any line that is like your scratch work, that will not contain a justification. We're going to show our work, but it's not needed necessarily every time. But to start our problems, we will show our work like adding to both sides. Those do not have the property next to it as the line with the equal sign. So for example, I want to solve this first problem. I want to get x by itself. And I see that there's a -7. So in order to get rid of -7, I'm going to add 7. And I'm going to add it to both sides. Now, this is my scratch work, which means there's no justification here. And now I'm going to simplify. So this will cancel out, and I get x here. And then -26 plus 7 is a -19. Now, I used addition, and that was addition property of equality. This is the line with the equal sign. So what I'm going to do is put addition property of equality here to say, I got this by adding to both sides, which is exactly what we did. Now, the problem here is that this is not in the right order. X needs to be on the left-hand side. So I'm going to flip this around for my final answer. And that was symmetric property that allowed me to switch it around. And we're just going to go through a couple examples like this. So next one, same concept, x divided by 13. In order to get rid of that division, I'm going to multiply by 13 on both sides. And again, we're showing our work for the first bit of this. Scratch work does not require justification. So I'm just doing that to show what we did. So we're going to multiply by 13 on both sides. This will cancel and x will come down. 13 times 2 is 26. And this is the line that has an equal sign. So what I need to do is write the reason I got this. So I got this answer by multiplying both sides by 13. So I'm going to write multiplication property of equality is how I got that line. So now we're going to step it up to a two-step equation. So x divided by 6 minus 7. The first thing I'm going to do to both sides is add 7. So remember, it's always the weaker operation first. So I'm going to add 7 to both sides. No justification is required for scratch work. I'm going to bring my answer down. So x divided by 6 equals -3. Now, how did I get this? I need to write an answer here because of that equal sign. I got that by using addition property of equality. Remember, what you used always goes next to the answer of how you got it. So I got this by adding, so I need to say I used addition. Now, I'm still not done. I need to get rid of that divide by 6. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 6. Again, no justification needed for the scratch work. That's just for our own use. X comes down. -3 times 6 is -18. I use multiplication, so I'm going to write that. I got this by multiplication property of equality. All right, next one. 8 plus 2x. 2x is stronger of an operation, so I've got to get rid of that +8, and I'm going to do that by subtraction. So I'm going to -8 from both sides. Remember that scratch work, so I bring it down. 2x. 46 minus 8 is 38. And I got that using subtraction. So I'm going to write subtraction property of equality. Now I need to get rid of this 2, so I'm going to do that by division since it's multiplication. And remember, this is where a lot of people make mistakes. You cannot flip x around yet because we're working one property at a time. So this needs to cross out. X comes straight down. 38 divided by 2. That's 19. That comes straight down, and I got that by division property of equality. Then what I can do in my last step is flip this around, so x is in front, so x equals 19, and that is symmetric property. All right, I'm going to start off this one with you guys because it has a distribution property, which we haven't used yet, and then I'll have you guys try and finish solving this on your own. So first thing, I have parentheses, which means I'm going to use distributive property. So I'm going to get 4 minus 28x, and that 88 comes down. I got this, remember this has an equal sign, so I need a property. I got that by using distributive property. And now that I've used distributive property, I'm going to solve this. Now, this problem right here is exactly like number 4. So go ahead and try and answer this on your own. Pause the video, try and solve it with the properties, and then check your work. Okay, so first I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. So 88 minus 4 is 84. This will cancel, and that negative 28x comes down. I use subtraction to do that, so subtraction property of equality. Now I need to divide by a negative 28 on both sides. Here the x will cancel, and then 84 divided by 28, we get a negative 3 because of that negative sign here, so negative 3. I use division, so division property of equality. And the last thing, this needs to flip around, so I get x equals negative 3. And I get that whenever I flip around, that's by symmetric property. All right, so we're stepping up in caliber here. So this next one, this is going to be our last one that I do with you. Here, we don't have distribution. We don't need to clean up. But one thing that's new for this one is that we have variables on both sides that we need to figure out. Now, if you remember our notes from yesterday, when we have variables on both sides, it's smartest to get rid of the smaller one so that it keeps things positive. So that's what I'm going to do. Out of 7x and 4x is smaller. So I'm going to get rid of that one first. So minus 4x from both sides. I get negative 13, and then 5 plus 3x. So I use subtraction to do that. So subtraction property of equality. Now I'm going to work on solving since I'm left with one variable. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. 3x comes down. Negative 13, negative 5 creates a bigger negative of negative 18. And I got that by subtracting again. So you'll see sometimes now we'll have the same property used multiple times. So we still need to say that we use it again. And now I'm going to divide. So I'm dividing by 3. I get x equals negative 6. And I did that by division. So I'm going to write division property of equality. Okay, so last one I'll do with you has a couple or all the different operations used together. So first thing we want to go through is, do I have parentheses? Do I need to distribute? And the answer is yes. So I'm going to distribute that negative 5. So negative 3 comes down, negative 5 times 7, negative 35x. Negative 5 times 7 is a positive 35. So just be careful with your negative signs there. Then that 32 and 3x will come down. I got that by distributive property. So I distributed. Now I'm going to look to clean up if I can. So if I look on this left-hand side, I have a negative 3 and a positive 35. Remember, when you're combining like terms, that equal sign cannot be crossed. So all I see is over here, negative 3 and 35 that are alike. So that's the same thing as 35 minus 3. So I'm going to get a 32, positive 32, and negative 35x comes down. And then over here, 32 plus 3x. And that was combining like terms, so CLT. Now I have variables on both sides, so I need to get rid of one of them. Pick on the smaller one, and if you look, the smaller one here is actually that negative 35. So I'm going to add 35x to both sides. That's going to leave me with 32 over here. A 32 will come down on the right-hand side, and 35 plus 3 is 38x. And so I get that by adding, so addition property of equality. Remember, anytime there's scratch work, you do not have a justification, you skip that line. Now I'm going to have to solve for the x, so I have a 32 and a 38. I'm going to get rid of the 32 first, so I'm going to do that by subtracting. So over here, 38x comes down. And now here is where things can get a little weird. 32 minus 32, that is going to give us a 0. And what we need to remember is 0 is a number. So that doesn't mean your problem is done. It means this side is just 0 now. So I get that by subtracting. And then my next step is going to be dividing. So I have this 38x still. So I'm going to divide both sides by 38. x comes down, and then over here I have 0 divided by 38, which is just 0. So I got that by division property of equality. Now, last step, x is on the wrong side, so I need to flip it over. So I get x equals 0 by symmetric property. So this one contained pretty much every single type of operation. We had to distribute, we had to clean up, and then we had to get our x by itself by using addition, subtraction, division. And then the last part, we would need to make sure x was on the left-hand side. So one thing to remember is that if one of your sides equals 0, that does not mean your problem falls apart. Remember, 0 is a real number. 0 is allowed to exist, so sometimes your answer is just 0. So what I want you guys to do, go ahead and try number 8 on your own, see how you do, and we'll check it, and then the rest of this notes page we'll pick up with in class. So try 8 on your own, pause the video, check it, and then we will be done. Okay, so first is distribution. I get a negative 28, and then negative 4 and negative 4, be careful, makes a positive 16b. Negative 28 minus 3b comes down as is. So I have distributive property for my first step. Now I look to combine like terms, but on both sides, there's no like terms on either side, so I move on. But I do have variables on both sides. So this is where people tend to get stuck. If we have variables on both sides, we have to get rid of one of them. I'm going to get rid of the minus 3b because that is a smaller number. And I'm going to do that by adding 3b to both sides. So negative 28 comes down. I have negative 28 over here. And 3 plus 16 is a 19, so 19b. I got that by addition property of equality because I added to both sides. Now I'm going to solve by adding 28 to both sides. And this is just like the problem before. Hopefully we saw that. I added 28 and that gave me 19b over here. Negative 28 plus 28, that's going to give me 0 on the left-hand side. I got that by addition property of equality because I added again. Now I need to get b by itself still. Even though there's 0, that does not mean the problem's done. I'm going to divide by 19 on both sides. So b comes down. 0 divided by anything is 0. I got that by division property of equality. And now I'm going to flip it because my variable has to be on the left-hand side. So b equals 0 by symmetric property. All right, so next page is full of problems. Do not work on any of these. Do not attempt those. We're going to pick up with this tomorrow in class, so make sure to leave all of these blank.